another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and the most recent trailer for Andor has dropped, and it definitely added a lot more information about how this season will play out. Remember, the second and final season of Andor will span the remaining 4 years between Andor Season 1, which takes place in 5 BBY, and Rogue One, which takes place just before 0 BBY. And just like last season, the second season will be organized into 4 3-episode arcs, which can be viewed like an individual movie. And now, after the release of this last trailer, it's pretty clear to me what those 4 stories are going to look like, more or less. So let's start by taking a look at Arc 1 in 4 BBY. We're going to call this Building an Army, because that's exactly what's happening. So at the end of Season 2, we have the riot on Ferrix. Needless to say, individuals who participated in this riot are now wanted by the Empire, and they will need to escape. Especially Brasso over here, who smashed an Imperial trooper in the head with a brick, and basically started off this entire party. Bix Caillian is also a wanted fugitive with ties to the Rebel Underground, and she was taken from Imperial captivity. She's going to be wanted still. And then we have Mon Mothma, whose father is killed by the Empire after he's arrested. He actually throws a bomb during the Ferrix riot, and it hits a stockpile of detonators, and that really escalates the situation. It probably kills several Imperial soldiers and innocent bystanders, and then it results in the Empire indiscriminately firing blaster rounds into the crowd. These 3 individuals, and honestly everyone else who might be loosely connected to the riots and the Daughters of Ferrix, are going to need to get out of there. And at the end of Season 2, we do see all these individuals on a freighter, which is being piloted by Jezzy, a friend of Marva. They're clearly going to ground. Now, we've already seen many clips and glimpses of the Ferrix group, as I like to call them, but in the recent trailer it becomes very clear what's happened to them, and this most likely will be in the first arc, which will take place in 4 BBY. We see Brasso, Pac, and Bix in some kind of farming community. You know, we've mentioned in previous videos how this kind of looks like Lothal, which is where the show Rebels takes place. Rebels, by the way, also runs from 5 BBY to 0 BBY, so it would make sense if there was some crossover. But then again, I really think it'd be too messy for Andor to try to incorporate Rebels characters into this show. Now, obviously, Filoni has already brought Hera Syndulla, Ezra Bridger, Sabine, and Zeb to live action, but I really don't see Tony Gilroy being cool with this kind of crossover and cameo in Andor. It's just not his style at all, right? He doesn't want the audience to lose focus. He's telling a very concise and important story here. So usually in Star Wars, when you have an idyllic community where everyone is living peacefully, usually in an agrarian setting, they are going to be interrupted by the evil fascists, which in this scenario is an Imperial ship that appears overhead. Although instead of using a triangular-shaped Imperial-class Star Destroyer, we have a Gazanti-class cruiser, which, guys, this satisfies me so much. You know, I've been telling people for years now that the Gazanti-class cruiser is the backbone of the Imperial military. You got a few escaped fugitives living in some hippie agrarian commune. You don't send an entire ISD in. Heck, you never send those things out. As Imperial Governor Everest Chalice Oli said, the Imperial-class Star Destroyer is the most resource-intensive ship the galaxy has ever seen. The Gazanti-class cruiser is carrying enough to handle whatever the hell is going on here. And in one of the first scenes of this trailer, we see Brasso on his knees getting arrested by a stormtrooper squad. Things are not going well, clearly. Now, the other reason why I believe that this agrarian world is Lothal is because we also see Andor in this storyline breaking into a Senior Fleet System facility that is developing an advanced TIE fighter. We later see him using that TIE fighter to do a strafing run on an Imperial troop transport on that same agrarian world. Lothal was known for having a large Senior Fleet Systems presence along with a facility to produce the advanced TIE Defender. What we see Andor flying is clearly not a TIE Defender. All signs point to this vessel being a TIE Avenger instead. A very potent and deadly fighter that is comparable to the TIE Defender, as it is far superior to the standard TIE, but the TIE Avenger is still cheaper and smaller than the TIE Defender. And so, as you can see, there are a lot of similarities between this agrarian world and Lothal, and I do find it very funny that Andor, despite being, described as a more mature and serious version of the early rebellion, still has to rely on your usual rebel tropes, missions where you're stealing TIE fighters, saving your friends from Imperial transports and stormtroopers. At the end of the day, Andor is still set in the Star Wars galaxy, and the rules of the Star Wars galaxy say you have to do these things in order to be a Star Wars story. And so anyway, in this first story arc, Andor has to rescue Brasso, most likely because Bix or someone else manages to escape the Empire and contact him. Well, actually, Bix is seen struggling with some Imperials, so maybe it's like B2 Emo who contacts Andor. And so the reason why I call this story arc building an army is because that's exactly what's happening. The Eldani raid woke up the Empire. They started rolling out massive changes to how the security systems work. The ISB is taking on the reins and slowly learning how to wield the massive amount of power they've been given. And Andor and his people will be laying low after the Ferrix riot, planning their next move. And so the first arc will really be about Andor reconnecting with his people, who were a very integral part of the first season, and we'll see him gather these people as they take the plunge and become full-on rebels. Andor, at the end of the day, is a story about the everyman and how tyranny takes away everything from the common person until they have no choice but to fight back. So, the second story arc that we'll see will take place in 3BBY, and I believe it will involve the planning and eventual execution of some kind of rebel operation that turns into the Gorman massacre. The Gorman massacre, as discussed in previous videos, is the catalyst for Mon Mothma to flee from the Imperial Senate in Coruscant. It's because of the Gorman massacre that the Rebel Alliance, or the Alliance to Restore the Republic, is formally created. Without Mon Mothma escaping, none of this happens. The Gorman massacre has always been an important part of the lore, but we've never had a lot of details. All we know is that an Imperial crackdown killed many innocent individuals, and Mon Mothma finally had enough, and she makes this impassioned speech against Palpatine.
The monster will come for us all!
What happens to her is somewhat covered by the Rebel series and the episode Secret Cargo. The Rebel cell known as Phoenix is involved with her escape from the capital and to the Outer Rim. In Andor Season 2, we'll see a different part of this operation. We'll see how the Gorman massacre unfolds. And if Tony Gilroy keeps up the same vibes and themes he has going in the first season, I think this is going to be one of the more shocking moments in the entire show. It's clear that Andor and his friends are going to be involved in this event happening on Gorman. We even see Ham in another trailer, I believe, in the middle of the chaos. So it's not just going to be Ferrix guys, it's also going to be Narkina 5 guys like Melshi. We have the scene right here with Andor and Luthen talking about this operation concerning the Gormans here.
If it goes up in flames, it will burn very brightly.
I'm guessing that the Gorman protest was a naturally occurring event, and Luthen Rael is again ready to take advantage of this powder keg by tossing some limp matches into the ring. Now, unfortunately for Cassian Andor, I don't think Luthen is just going to be depending on his rebel cell. He's going to involve someone else. At the end of the last season, Luthen was getting closer and closer to Saw Gerrera. They even developed a mutual understanding somewhat. I think Luthen Rael is a bit scared of Saw Gerrera, but at the same time, Saw is one of the few people he has working for him that is willing to really get his hands dirty. And here's the interesting thing. Later on, when Mon Mothma takes over the Alliance to Restore the Republic, she'll be very hostile towards Saw Gerrera. And she'll even accuse him of some pretty egregious things.
You target civilians! Kill those who surrender! Break every rule of engagement!
But at this point in Andor Season 1 and 2, Saw Gerrera is just a partisan. He has some relations to Luthen Rael, but the rebels are still working with him. He hasn't done anything that crazy. And so I think, actually, Saw Gerrera is somehow going to be involved in the Gorman massacre. He might be responsible for why this protest turns into a massacre in the first place. If we take a look at Andor's team during their operation, they get surprised by a gigantic explosion, and I'm going to guess that Saw Gerrera is somehow involved in this situation. On a side note, I also believe that Wilmon Pak, the kid who threw that detonator at Ferrix, will slowly be won over by Saw's more violent faction, as his violent techniques are going to suit his personality better. I actually think we're looking at this kid in the scene here, but I have to do a little more research before I figure out exactly what's going on here. So a lot of terrible things will be happening to Mon Mothma in the second season, unfortunately. First, she has this problem with hiding her finances from the ISB. She's donated a lot of money to the rebellion, and she's about to be discovered. And so she ends up recruiting the help of Davos Skolden, an unsavory character who essentially launders money for the rich and corrupt. The only problem is we see some scenes in the second season with Davos and director Orson Krennic, who is the leader of the Death Star program. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Krennic was using Skolden somehow to raise more money for the project or hide money for the project. Remember, this entire program was supposed to be a secret, and it was funded from a blacked-out budget. It's clear that this relationship between Skolden and Krennic puts Mon Mothma into even more danger. This is not going to be good for her. And to make matters even worse, we keep seeing some kind of Trendillan party or celebration, and how in this trailer it's revealed that Mon Mothma's daughter is going to marry Davos Skolden's kid. This is a part of this deal between Mon and Davos when they first struck a deal to cover her finances. And now it seems like it's actually going to happen. Now, I guess the silver lining here is, as terrible as things seem for Mon Mothma, this gives her an excuse to finally completely cut connections with Coruscant. The Gorman massacre will just be the icing on the cake, the final straw that makes her leave. Although I'm not sure if history books will cover it like that. Okay, so here's where things get a bit more hazy in Arc 4. We have scenes of Andor in his Rogue One outfit. We have scenes of all of the characters at the Massacre base on Yavin 4. It's clear that these scenes take place immediately before Rogue One. It's possible that the show is hiding what happens in the last arc, and that makes sense. One last surprise before the end, which has already been revealed in Rogue One. There are a few other scenes and characters I haven't mentioned yet, like that shot of Saw's partisans stealing what looks like more X-Wings. Although I think that probably takes place earlier on in the season. We also have Cyril Karn and Detramiro's characters to deal with. Their fortunes seem to have flipped around since the last season. And obviously we also have director Orson Krennic, who will play a big role in this season. If I'm going to take a guess here, I think the last arc will probably have to do with the Death Star. It's kind of in the background of everything. It's the only reason why this part of the Star Wars galaxy even exists. Rogue One would not exist without the Death Star. Andor definitely wouldn't either. And as we'll see, the Death Star is everywhere in the background. In the first season, Andor and his cellmates unknowingly contribute to the construction of the program. And now I imagine Mon Mothma's illicit money is flowing through the same accounts that are secretly funding the Death Star as well. I also like this idea that the Death Star program, despite being a secret, is so massive in scope and size that it does affect everyone in one way or another. And now the rebels will awaken to this horrible secret as reports and sightings of the Death Star will increase, leading to the pivotal moment on Scarif and Rogue One. And so there you have it, guys. That's my analysis of these trailers and what I think is going to happen in Season 2 of Andor. I think I got most of the big picture things right. Obviously, the smaller details are going to be a little harder to predict, but yeah, I think that is the structure for the second season of Andor. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.